Welcome back, members, after a short break. Now we shall move forward for last technical session of today's, that is on audit of advances, risk and responsibilities. We have with us CAPR Suresh to present on the topic. I now request Bangalore Branch Chairman to kindly escort a speaker onto the desk. I also request Chairman to kindly welcome our speaker by presenting a floral bouquet. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir. To give a very brief introduction about CAPR Suresh, has been in just to
and then also it's okay. So I think with the presentation
Thank
can
you, sir.
start.
Over to you.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to come back to our members in Bangalore because it's a very knowledgeable crowd and it's always something which we look forward to. And at the outset, I should thank the Bangalore branch, which consistently for the 10th year in a row has found me relevant to come and deliver my address on this topic. So I think a great deal of confidence has been placed on me. Thank you, Shetty and Divya, who is my student, entire managing committee, and also you members who have sat through a whole day and still sitting here for the last session to hear me out. I am lucky on 3 counts. Number 1, my topic is audit of advances, risk and responsibilities. The audit of advances has been covered largely by all the 3 speakers. Risk and responsibilities has been very specifically covered by Mr. Vittal Raj and others also. So I am very happy that my topic is already covered. Number 2, I am lucky because whether I knew about it or not, I don't have any structured presentation. So whatever we will have is an experiential learning of playing out some illustrative examples of what is that we are up to, how we need to handle that, and it's a very interactive session which we will have. So the necessity to prepare a presentation was not there, and that was second thing. And the third reason why I'm lucky is I'm very sure all of you will be very curious and inquisitive to find out after all this, what is it that I'm going to offer you people. So that's the challenge which I have and which also I'm lucky about. Friends, my friend Jairam Shetty was asking in the afternoon, sir, whatever happens, okay, why is it that the chartered accountants are made as scapegoats? Anywhere, anything happening, the first fall guy is chartered accountant. Why? Well, to tell you that, I feel what is our profession called in short? CA. Okay. And what does it stand for? So many cliche things. Many times people keep telling so many things about it. Well, in my opinion, the C stands for the confidence which has been placed on the profession as a whole. Right from 1949, even before the Constitution of India has come into effect, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India was brought into existence. Same way, from that time onwards, whether the audits under the Companies Act or under the Income Tax Act or whether it is your certifications, so much of a faith is placed on the work which has been done by the chartered accountants. And what does that A stand for? The A stands for what is called as the attribute. What is the attribute of a CA? What is the attribute of a CA? I think the time for me to move around to see nobody is sleeping. It's quite difficult at this point of time, but let me. Okay. What is an attribute of a CA? Fantastic. What is it technically called as? Professional skepticism. This is the attribute of a CA. Whatever is given to you, we are not supposed to trust it. Vittal Raj told, verify and then trust. Okay. So this is the fundamental attribute of a chartered accountant, that we are supposed to have a professional skepticism in doing our work. Having said this, I'm going to take you through, find out my presentation path is going to be short. It is going to be illustrative. So it will be very interactive. And whatever you have is what is the learning for me, because you have more questions for that. You have more answers to the questions which I have. So maybe I may throw out the questions to you and benefit from the answers which you will give me. That's the way we are going to go forward. Who creates NPA in banks? Who creates NPAs in banks? system. Who creates NPAs in banks? Is it RBI? Because they have a IRAC norms. But for that, you would not have classified like that, or RBI would not have done. Is it banks? Ultimately, it is the borrower who makes his account on NPA. So when we go to the branch and do the audit, okay, most of the times when we find something is an NPA, the branch management will come and tell, sir, if you do this NPA, my promotion will get affected, or some directions will come, or the general manager will come and sit with you and ask not to classify. Please tell them it is not we are classifying an account as NPA. It is a conduct of the borrower which is making the account an NPA. So don't have to have any sort of lenience on this. If an account is bad, it is your interest to see that it is classified as bad. Vittal Raj also told, time has come for us to take somebody who is not an auditor to the bank audit, but who is a specialist on technology. His job is to feed you with all the information which you require to cull it out from the system and take it out and give, including the documentation of the work which you do. Somebody must be exclusively available to do that, because the only person doing the audit or people who are core audit team cannot do that also. So, yes. Sir, you are taking a person. You have your professional skepticism to find the person whom you are taking is worth taking, because it is your staff. No, sir, you are taking your audit staff whom you should have as part of your team. We are not talking about the auditee side. In your office setup, the people are doing. Not required. Not for this. He says for the people on the on the online, they may be able to hear you. Look, then the point what I want to drive is that it is not just for doing an audit. Gone are the times when you go do the audit and come and sit. Today, with the amount of requirement for you to report, you also need evidences to document what you have reported. So you need to strengthen your team of audit and those who can support the audit. This will be useful. Then I will take you through the gist of circulars and throw out certain examples for us to have an understanding of whatever has been done, COVID, non-COVID. But before you start all these things, the moment you go to the branch, you go and start talking to them about what is the nature and what has been told by them. Because almost about 50% of what you will be able to gather by doing your audit, if you spend half an hour discussing about it, you will be able to gather the entire audit domain of the particular branch. What is it every day? From morning, everybody has been telling there's a Supreme Court decision that account should not be classified as NPA. How many of us have understood what has been told? Does it mean that we don't have to classify any account as NPA for this year? You heard Shyam telling that. You heard our Manohar Gupta telling about it. You also heard Vittal Raj telling. What did we understand about it? Mic. Where's the mic? Yeah. Does it mean that no account will be classified as NPA for the current year? Speak on that.
What, as per my understanding, if at 31st August, if it's not classified as an NPA, it need not be classified as an NPA.
But up to 31st March. Okay, good. Any other views? It's 31st August. You're right. Yes. Date is 31st.
If it is a standard asset, then it could not be classified.
Okay. Good. Sir, you wanted to tell something. Yes. You speak on this, because there are 500 people online who would like to hear you.
Borrower should be a defaulter as well as the standard asset. That should, both conditions should be satisfied.
He should be a defaulter
as well as
but standard.
Standard.
Then you can't classify it in NPA.
Those two conditions.
Good. Largely, I think, yeah, please go ahead. Yeah. Why I'm taking this time is this is most critical when you go for a branch audit, because everybody tells, but what you have understood about that is very important. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, in insolvency bankruptcy code also, there is specific provision given till March 24th of March 2021. Bank should not take any action under IBC also. So that's also reliable.
Yeah, that's slightly a different point. But let me tell you why I asked you this question and what is the answer for it. Basically, the Supreme Court of India, on the basis of an application made by Mr. Gajendra Sharma versus Union of India 825 by writ petition 825 by 2020, in a single line order said accounts which have not been marked as NPA as at 31st August should not be marked as NPA as at 31st March. The language is very crisp. What is marked as NPA? How different is it from classifying it as NPA? Because when you go to the branch for audit, this is what is going to come to you. What is marked as NPA? What is classified as NPA? What is the difference between marked and classified?
Marking is just only identifying the status of the borrower. But whereas classification means you are putting it into a particular table actually.
Anybody else would like to say a difference between being marked and classified? Yeah. If it's an SMA2, it's marked, is it? Go ahead, you tell me. Yeah. I'll tell you the reason why I'm taking this time for this. Yeah.
No, sir, I said the same thing. If it is marked as a SMA2, it is marked.
Okay. Let me tell you when and how NPA classification happens in a branch or a bank. Does it happen daily? Does it happen on a monthly basis? Does it happen on a quarterly basis?
I think it's done daily basis. NPS are marked daily basis because I think largely it's system driven.
KYC is still not coming to the system, so they cannot be a daily basis.
Yeah. So now we are getting into it. So if the NPA is not marked on daily basis or monthly basis, but gets done on a quarterly basis, where is the marking as on 31st August? How will you get to know whether it was marked as an NPA on 31st August? Because on 30th September, the quarterly run will happen. Then as an auditor, practically, how are you going to find out whether it was marked on 31st August or not?
Daily basis means that particular day it's like.
Daily doesn't happen in banks. Quarterly, if it happens, what as a statutory auditor are going to find on 31st August? How will you find out? First quarter means it is as on 30th June. But the Supreme Court order says if the account was NPA between 30th June and 31st August, it has to be classified as NPA. The dispensation is only from 1st of September onwards. Anytime prior to that, it can still be an NPA. As auditors, how are we going to handle this? How will you do that? Sir, easy to tell that 1st July and August. Practically, how will you do it at the branch?
We will apply NPA norms for up to as on 31st August, whether it's NPA or not.
The particular branch has 5,492 accounts.
Maybe bank has to, central level bank has to make the guidelines that as per They have to classify all the accounts as on 31st August, and accordingly we can.
That's why I'm asking you, how is it as auditors we are going to do the audit of it to say this account was not marked as NPA on 31st August. So this has to be given the benefit of the Supreme Court decision not to classify it as NPA as at 31st March also. It can become NPA from 1st of July to 31st August, it will still be an NPA account. But the run would have happened on 30th September. By the time the Supreme Court decision is there, they would not have invoked that. Because of that, the account will be classified as a standard asset as on 30th. I'll give you an illustration. An account became NPA on 15th of August 2020. How will you ascertain this? Should it be classified as NPA? Or when the run happened on 30th September, the branch is not classified as NPA. Okay, because the Supreme Court decision has already come. What as auditor, how will you find this first? And second, what is the treatment you will give? This is a practical thing which is likely to happen because of this. How to go about it? Sir, how many accounts will you see like that? Good. So let me give you the answer for this because I have sufficiently questioned you on this. First of all, take out the SMA2 accounts. The SMA2 accounts as on 28th of February 2020. Okay. If it is there, what happened? There were circulars dated 27th March 2020 because of COVID to grant a standstill clause to say that whatever is the amount of interest or installment falling due from the 1st of March 2020 till 31st of May 2020, okay, need not have to be serviced on account of COVID. So there was a standstill clause applied for interest and installment or any other payment due to the banking system by a borrower. 17th April, there is a circular to say that what should be done in such cases where this dispensation is given, what is the provisioning should be done by the banks. On the 23rd of May 2020, what circular said is that since the COVID is continuing, this period of standstill was extended from 1st of June 2020 till 31st August. So which means if an account was in SMA2 as on 28th February, there was no way in which such account could have become NPA as on 31st of August, provided what? Provided what? Interest rate? No, this is the standstill. No, that you don't have to service. Because of COVID, during this 6 months period, you don't have to service.
Up to 28th February, interest and installment to be served in the September month.
That is only later. By the time the Supreme Court decision has come on 1st September, there is a condition for the beneficial provisions given in the 27th March circular and 23rd May circular. It applies specifically to eligible borrowers. Who are the eligible borrowers?
Who could not service the interest due to COVID issues in March.
Okay. We are short of time, so I like to sort of move on. First of all, the circulars of 27th March and 23rd May applies to borrowers who are on default. Okay. Default not exceeding 30 days as on 28th February. So what happens is, if this dispensation were to be given as per the RBI circular, it is only for standard advances, or those who were classified as SMA 0, that is to say default of 0 to 29 days. So these are the people for whom this beneficial provision was given. Those who are in SMA 1 and in SMA 2, that is to say, where the default as on 28 February 2020 was more than 30 days or more, they are not eligible for this because they are already more than 30 days. Okay. So such cases, what happens is that if they are not eligible for it and the dispensation has not been given to them, and third thing is, if their accounts have not been restructured, in such cases, their dues will continue to fall, and if it crosses 90 days, such accounts have the potential to become NPA on or before 31st August 2020. If an account has become NPA on or before 31st August 2020, the Supreme Court's direction does not hold good. Such accounts need to be classified as NPA. Notwithstanding the fact that the beneficial provision of Supreme Court's interim order does not apply to such people. This is one case. Second case is, we say that it's marked and not classified, because marking an account, okay, is not on the records. Okay, classification happens when a run happens. Okay, so if an account was not classified wrongly as on 28th March 2020, okay, for example, if an account was standard as on 31st March 2020, okay, but would have become NPA on the 4th of April 2020, okay, by virtue of no credits in the account for 90 days, okay, anything like that, if the account was to have become NPA as on subsequently, these accounts should have been marked as NPA. But because of this dispensation or whatever it is, if the bank has failed to mark this account as NPA, such accounts don't get the dispensation of the RBI's beneficial provisions of 27th March 2020 or 23rd May 2020 or the Supreme Court's decision. So whilst there is a large understanding this year, not any accounts will be marked as NPA or coming into MOCs, that is not the truth, it is a myth. So as auditors, we still have a duty to find out whether accounts were not classified as on 28th February itself as NPA. In such cases, if you classify it as NPA now, this will not be against what the Supreme Court of India told, nor will it be treated as contempt of court. So this is number one. Number two, what else do you would like to specifically take out? You can feel free to tell me so that I will handle those questions if you specifically have any. Any questions? Who? If you can introduce your name, and that will be good for me to relate to you. Chittaranjan, yeah.
Limit sanctioned for the present borrower. So how do we deal with that? As a COVID package or something?
COVID package, the government of India came out with two major schemes. One is for existing borrowers, whatever loans they have taken, whether it is working capital loan or term loan, on the total amount of the outstanding as on the date, 20% without asking any questions was straight away given in order to overcome the COVID situation. This is an ad hoc limit. It has no relation to the security. Whatever existing security, same security levels were there, no additional securities are to be taken. It is only because of an extraordinary situation arising out of COVID. The next one is 3 lakh crores was earmarked for the small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, as part of guarantee scheme, where the government of India gives the guarantee for such loans, and the loans are disbursed to the MSMEs. These are the two schemes under which additional limits have been given, and if the account is standard, these additional limits will be treated as standard, and for this purpose your drawing power, other things and all are not to be reckoned at all, because These are additional to tide over the situations. However, what they told was, they said that banks can take a decision if they had given the sanction at 25% margin, they can relax the margin conditions. It can be brought down to 10% so that the drawing power goes up. While the limit is what we are going to be enhanced, they should have a drawing power to enjoy the limit. So in order to do that, corresponding to that, the margin requirements are also reduced. These are the beneficial two loan schemes which has been brought in to tide over the COVID situation. Any other questions? Has come. So I'll quickly take you through. We are talking about risks.
Moratorium period, whatever from.
Good. Your good name, sir? Mr. Raghavan is asking a very pertinent question. There is supposed to be a moratorium period, and how is it to be reckoned? Right? Basically, after having told you about the circulars of 27th March, 17th April, and 23rd May, RBI has come out with a couple of other circulars. The first of that is when GST was implemented, MSMEs were given a dispensation to say that those MSMEs which are registered with GST, okay, can go in for a restructuring, and such accounts will not be treated as NPA. This was applicable till 31st March 2020, which because of COVID has been extended. On 11th February 2020, this extension has been already granted by the Reserve Bank of India by way of a circular to say those MSMEs which are registered with GST or exempted from registering with GST can get their accounts restructured, and if they are not NPA as on that particular date, they can get their account restructured, and upon restructuring, okay, their account can be continued to be classified as standard advance. Notwithstanding this, on the 6th of August 2020, how many of you remember the 6th August 2020 circular which was referred to by the earlier speakers? Can you just put your hands out? Just we heard this in the morning. 6th August 2020, does it strike? Some speaker spoke about that circular. Is it the last session you are all not willing to put your hands up, or you have not registered what was told? Not registered. Okay, fine. It's fine. The point is that on 6th August, not one, two circulars are brought in by RBI on that date. One exclusively for MSMEs. One exclusively for MSMEs to say that an MSME, if it is having a default up to 30 days, the amount of loan and the interest which is due from the period of 1/3/2020 till 31st August also need not be serviced, but can be converted into a FITL. What is an FITL? Funded interest term loan. This can be converted into a funded interest term loan, and this funded interest term loan can be serviced on or before 31st March 2021, or including this interest along with the installments, including for the additional loans which are given, the maximum period of 2 years moratorium can be given. And whatever is the original tenure of the loan, if it is a CC advance, 1 year, or if it's a term loan, whatever is the period of the loan which was originally there, this additional time will also be added to that. So the repayment itself will get expanded to that date. So to that extent, the bank has to have a board approved policy. It has to give by way of, after ensuring eligibility of the borrower, and after that give them a moratorium. Moratorium cannot exceed 2 years, but if the borrower has a default more than 30 days as on 28th February 2020, he is not eligible for it. This is what we as auditors have to look at it. What is the status of such account as on 28th February 2020? If its status is SMA 0, that is, his overdues are less than 30 days, such borrowers are eligible borrowers. If they were in SMA 1 or SMA 2, even if a restructuring is done on the basis of the 6th August 2020, asset classification should continue. The account has to be classified as NPA. These are the accounts which can become as NPA prior to 31st August 2020, which we as auditors have to look at. Clear? Yes.
180 days from 1st of January 2020. How does that come in? I don't know. Please clarify.
Yeah,
If that circular comes, your discussion is academic, no?
Very true, sir. But the point is that that 180 days was brought in when GST was implemented. Okay, the time at which that dispensation of 180 days gets reset to 90 days. Okay, was over as on May 2019 itself. As on May 2019, February 2019, it was brought down to 120 days. And then from there, it was April, it was brought down to 120 days. And from there, the reset clause has happened on 1st of May 2019 itself. This is the dispensation given on behalf of requirement of the GST when it was implemented. For MSMEs, they gave additional, instead of 90 days, 180 days where norms were given. That is an earlier circular. That has expired on 31st May 2019. So that's out of the way. Okay. So the biggest risk we have as auditors, first is material misstatements. The second is non-identification of fraud. And I'm sure that as branch auditors, we have never thought about fraud as a reporting requirement for us. I'll pull out 3-4 practical experiences for us to look at it as auditors, what we should do in such cases. Number 3 is non-compliance with IRAC norms. Now let me talk about fraud. There is a RBI circular dated 1st June 2015. I would like you to download this. This is a framework to consider loan frauds. Okay. RBI says that a lot of frauds are happening. Okay. And methodologies in which it is happening. How to go about it. Who is responsible? In that, if somebody were to look at it, this is the framework for dealing with loan frauds. Okay. In this, there is a para which specifically states what is the role of auditors in this. It says the auditors are expected to look at it, and wherever they come across cases like that, they need to bring it out to the notice of them. From morning, I think all the 3 speakers spoke about EWS. What is EWS? Okay. Every single parameter which is not complied with in the early warning signal, okay, points out to fraud. What is the process? We also found people telling us RFAs. What is RFA? Red flagged accounts. What is red flagged accounts? Whenever you see any early warning signal being triggered, it is the duty of the auditor to bring it to the notice to flag those accounts as red flagged accounts so that the angle of fraud can be determined. So it is our duty in accounts where we see any of these instances to write to the branch in our LFAR or in our audit report to say these accounts requires red flagging, which has not been done. Simplest of instances. If morning also it was told, if as of 31st March 2019 and 31st March 2020, audited financial statements of the borrower shows stock at X. Okay. And the stock statement for those period shows that as 1.25x. You know what is the status? Because of the 1.25x, drawing power is there. So the account was not classified as NPA. And if you remove that 0.25x, if the drawing power falls below the required amount which is being used up, notwithstanding the limit being there, such account should have been classified as NPA. This not having been done, you think that the borrower does not know when he is reporting his audited figures as well as this, giving 2 different things. Is fraud? How many cases have we come across but we kept quiet? Have we ever flagged such accounts as red flagged accounts? This is our duty. This time we'll have to be very careful to note such accounts, especially in large advances. We are supposed to specifically mention all these things as part of it. I'll quickly go through this for your benefit. Default in payment of banks, sundry debtors, and statutory bodies liabilities. Raid by income tax authorities or any other authorities. I don't want to read all these things. I'll definitely tell you that you can download this. But what you can definitely see is that if there is a large advance and you as a branch auditor want to visit that particular unit, you tell the manager, we want to have a unit inspection of this. If the borrower does not cooperate, by giving excuses which are not acceptable, because you don't need the borrower. His books of accounts, stock, everything is there in their place. You need to only have permission to go there to inspect it. If he does not allow you to come there, that is a very good sign for you to say that there is something which is not meeting the eye. Such accounts needs to be looked into. And in such accounts, when you start taking out the audited financial statements, start reviewing the operations in the accounts and see the stock statements. And if the account has outstanding of 5 crores and above in OD or CC accounts, the requirement for stock audit is mandatory. If the stock audit is not done, or where the stock audit has been done, but there are discrepancies noticed by the stock auditor, either in terms of not classifying the non-moving, slow-moving items. Now the stock audit report is also mandated to give you the difference between audited financial statements and what is the stock reported by the borrower. It will be part of the stock audit report itself. You take access to that. If you find significant variance in that, okay, you need to give effect of that while arriving at the drawing power. And if that is going to have an impact of it in classifying the account as NPA, you need to go ahead and do that. And if you feel a significant portion of the stock is missing or not there or overstated, you need to go the next step to say, these are accounts which needs to be red flagged. So this is how you go about to identify fraud, give the early warning signal, write to the bank, write to the central auditors, so that identification of fraud accounts can happen at an early stage. This is allowing the entire assets to be depleted so that nothing will be realized by the banks. This is what is expected out of the branch auditor. Okay, next. There are so many instances like this for EWS. There are almost about 43 items which are given there. You go through that. Each one of them has a
Stock. Because of the COVID, the borrower had a huge stock. And immediately after that period, if the stocks are totally out of use, what sort of measures, what sort of comments?
See, this is a case where you are talking about there is physically stocks available of what is reported. But assuming, say, it is a perishable item. And during the period of 6 months when the entire units are closed, the value of the perishable item goes down. This is not a fraud because there is no malified intention on the part of the borrower to report wrongly the stocks. He has reported the stocks correctly. Events occurring which is beyond his control can deteriorate the quality of the asset, but cannot be attributed as a fraud. Okay, but notwithstanding that, even for those things, if the account was having a default of less than 30 days as on 28th February, such accounts will continue to be a standard asset as of 31st March 2021. Yeah. Do I need two mics? One I have here, one another. No, I don't need this, no? Why am I holding two? Not quite, no? Yeah. Okay. So the question is that, can you repeat it?
paid actually. Instead of that, I don't know the borrower, bank directly transfer other facilities.
Other facilities in the sense?
CC.
Okay, okay.
Bank debits that account. What will happen?
In what other account?
The deviation.
In what other account will they be able to debit?
CC.
Other than CC, where can they debit it?
No, that is also other than this, that is CC is fund based.
Other than CC, where can the bank debit?
So current account also it can be done.
This is exactly what was told in the morning. They are not supposed to debit any account other than the operating working capital account. When you have a CC account and a current account, any development of LCs or invocation of bank guarantees has to go through your operating account, which is your CC account. It cannot go through your current account, because when it comes to CC and OD, if the CC account is already in, say, D2 category, okay, and if the current account is not mapped with the same custody, what will happen is, based on this current account being debited, for the same borrower, CC will be in D2 category and this LC may come in substandard category. This sort of distortion can happen. That is why RBI specifically mandated that any devolvement of LCs or invocation of bank guarantees should be only debited to their operating account, which is CC account. Then, having said the risks, now let's understand the core of the risk. Okay, what is the risk? First of all, who is making that is a risk, and what is the type of consequences which can arise out of risk? The first is, if you take the Master Circular of RBI, the IRAC norms dated 1st July 2015, please go through paragraph 5.1.1. What does it say? This is not an examination, much less not a CA exam. Why am I even telling about paragraph and asking you people to answer for it? Is it because I want to showcase what I know? Clearly not, because I want you to be sensitized that in that paragraph it says that the responsibility of classifying an account as NPA and making provision thereof rests on the bank and the statutory auditors. So primary responsibility has been cast by the Reserve Bank of India, which has mandated the branch audit, to say the branch auditors are responsible for correct classification and provisioning. So this is the first risk, where it originates. Number two is bank. If an account is classified wrongly or otherwise, what happens is, to save their face, whether it is with an investigating agencies like an ED or CBI or whatever it is, we have time and again come across situations where they have blamed the branch auditors having not found out that and having flagged it. And because of that, we have seen ED issuing notices to statutory auditors of branch as to why you failed to perform this duty. So this is a risk which is very much on the cards, and few people have been already affected on this. So we'll have to be careful about that. The third is Reserve Bank of India. I remember an instance 2 years back. A small chartered accountant, maybe 7 years, 8 years into practice, he had done a branch of advance of 35 crores, not big. You know, he got a love letter from Reserve Bank of India. What did it say? You have not verified the sanction terms having been properly punched into the master in terms of the rate of interest and the repayment terms, because of which the account has not been classified as NPA. What happened in that case was, in the partition table of the demand which has to be raised and the appropriation of the monies to come, for some reason, the date on which the demands were to commence, okay, was mentioned at a future date. It may be a punching error or whatever it is. Because of which, no credits were coming in the term loan account, but the account was not classified as NPA at all. So when a system audit was done by the Reserve Bank of India, they came to see that no, that this has been overlooked by the branch auditor and a love letter came to him. So this is the reason why even in the morning when we told, in the large advances which are there, our attention has to be to such detail that we need to look at the credit appraisal, we need to look at the loan sanctioning, we need to look at the sanctioning process, we need to see the documentations required for ensuring that all the terms and conditions related to the sanction are met. Then we also have to see that disbursements are done as per the terms of sanction. We need to see the monitoring, post-sanction disbursement monitoring of that advance. After that, we'll have to see the subsequent conduct of the account. And then we need to see whether there is any diversion of funds. We need to see the analysis of the financial statements. We need to see any other accounts which are having other deficiencies, which going forward, one after the other, I will take it up. Okay. The next is ICAI. When a bank takes up a case, there is a problem between two borrowers, brothers, they fought between themselves. One of them wrote to ICAI saying that this has not been looked into that particular thing. I have been removed from the partnership firm, but what has happened is that this has not been looked into, this has not been reported, it is continuing as a partnership firm, and because of that I have lost a lot of money. Ultimately we become the what is called as the guinea pigs. For anything we are beaten. And for fight between the two brothers, the matter went to ICAI. Unfortunately, that member was found guilty because they said, you should have seen the continuation of the loan. In the continuation of the loan, both the borrowers as partners should have signed the documents. In this case, one partner has not signed the renewal documents. If the partner has not signed the renewal documents, you are supposed to report that in your long form LFAR of deficiencies in documentation, which you have failed to do. So for somebody's problem, we get into that. So please pay attention that we may get love letters from the ICAI when we don't do things properly, especially in case of the sample which we selected. The next danger is peer review. Today, earlier we had, I'm sure all of you are familiar with peer review. How many of you have got peer reviewed here? 1, 2, 3. Good. At least a reasonable set of people have got peer reviewed. Let me tell you, for peer review, earlier there were 3 categories. Okay. Category 1, Category 2, Category 3. Category 1 are those who are doing all the listed companies and also those which are potentially going to be there. Category 2 are those doing the branch audits like this or having turnovers up to that. Third one was not having anything of substance at all, but very small firms also are category 3. From 1st July 2020, the revised peer review statement classifies them only into 2 categories, Category 1 and Category 2. For Category 1, peer review will be done once in 3 years and it's mandatory. Category 2, which hitherto was, though mandatory, was not being taken up at all, has now been made mandatory and it has to be done once in 4 years. So what you are going to do now, most likely in the next 2 to 4, 5 years time, when a peer review happens, you must be in a position to showcase the documentation on the basis of which you arrived at your opinion, the processes which you adopted, the audit plan which you had, audit program which you adopted, audit methodologies which you did, audit sampling which you took, how you arrived at it, what are the discrepancies you noticed, what is the audit treatment you gave for them, and to come to a justification as to what is your audit conclusion. All these things you need to document it so that when a peer reviewer comes later, you will not have access to the same branch. Even if you have access to the same branch, manager won't be there. Even if the new manager comes, not any person is going to cooperate with you. Please take all your requirements at the time of audit itself. This is another danger, risk. Then next is when to say that if an account was supposed to be classified as NPA on say 31st March 2019 has not been done. In 2020 also it was not done. You are the auditors for 31/3/21. You are going there. When you go there, you find out the account was already NPA as on 31st March 2019. When you report that as directly as doubtful one, if it's a large advance in which it is happening, what will happen is there is every likelihood based on your reporting of an accentuated NPA. That is, it's not going through the normal substandard doubtful. Once it is directly going to doubtful, the auditors who have not classified it in the earlier years may be triggered with a reason to explain why they have not classified it as NPA, why that failure cannot be attributed for misconduct. So this could also happen. So what we need to do is, it's not only this year. What you fail to do now, if it is found out later, next year or later, that could also trigger risk for us. The next is, you have seen a case where, straight away in one particular case, the account was classified by us as doubtful 3 with 100% provision. Okay. Of course, the bank had initially the argument saying that with this, no, that, all that. Finally, when we told all the norms, and being central auditors also are also able to explain them why it should be done as per RBI norms, the account was classified as doubtful 3. The borrower went to the court, went to the Andhra Pradesh High Court, saying this account was never classified as substandard at all. Straight away they are taking it to doubtful category, okay, and they are trying to say that the account has been bad for this many years. My credit rating in the society is lost because of this. So this is another potential risk which we had. Luckily, we had all the documents which were required to be there, okay, which including the bank did not have. The advocate of the bank called us from the court saying, sir, this is to be submitted. In 15 minutes time, I sent them a small note, one-page note, which was produced before the court as to why it was classified. We had put that it was term loans. We said this was the terms of sanction, this was the due date, this was not paid. Then it was restructured. This was the due date, this was what was supposed to be paid, not paid, restructured. This was the due date as per the restructured terms, due date, not paid, third restructuring. We told the relevant paragraph of the RBI Master Circular to say, repeated restructuring of the restructured terms, if it is not complied, then the asset classification has to be with reference to original terms of sanction, not the restructured terms. So if you go by the restructured terms, it would have been only a substandard asset. But because of the repeated restructuring, when you go by the original restructuring terms, the account straight away became a doubtful 3. And once we are able to send this RBI Master Circular, that paragraph and this, what happened was, the court immediately ordered that person to pay 25% of the amount immediately, and the balance to be paid within 6 months' time. It was a huge amount. The bank has called and thanked me. Sir, this fellow was not paying. Now, because of this, at least 25% we have got it. And of course, I have already made 100% provision for them in the bank. So whatever money they got, improved their balance sheet, because that much became income straight away. So, but why I am telling you is, there are potential risks of a borrower going to the courts also. So we need to have our documentation, our working papers, and our works completely in order. Then the next final thing on the risk is reporting. Morning also we saw, in terms of reporting, we all are aware that we have to report on SA 700, 705, 706. 700 is unmodified report, 705 is modified report, 706 is a disclaimer. Okay. So when it comes to reporting, this year, because of the Supreme Court decision, accounts are not going to be classified as NPA. Provisions are going to be made. Okay. Accounts are to be treated as NPA. In my practical experience, I am very sure each of the branch auditor will be asked to certify the accounts which otherwise would have slipped into NPA, but because of the Supreme Court's interim injunction, is treated still as standard asset, but on which the bank is going to make the provision as required, as per IRAC norms, and also going to reverse the amount of interest. This has to be certified at the branch level. I have the same experience last year as a central statutory auditor of a particular bank, where we had insisted on the branch auditor to certify, because these are accounts at the branch level. And at the central level, there are 18,000 accounts. I can't see all the 18,000 accounts. Whereas at each branch level, it was 7, 8, 9, 15 accounts, which is easily possible for the branch auditor to look. So this is what is going to happen this year. When this happens in your audit report, where will you bring this point? You understand that you are going to do something which in essence is in line with the IRAC norms, but because of Supreme Court decision, you cannot give effect in IRAC norms, which means you are going to do it outside the books of accounts as an ADAC provision and also going to reverse, which in effect means in the books of accounts of the bank, the account is continuing as a standard advance. What is the methodology to reckon income on standard advances? How do you reckon income on standard advances? Accrual basis, right? In this case, you are going to reverse the amount of interest. Then is it accrual? In a standard advance, can you account it on standard basis? What is the accounting policy of the bank as a whole? If the policy of the bank is accrual basis, and for such accounts, you are going to violate the policy of the bank, does it warrant reporting in your audit report? Where will you report it? Correct. There you have a report, no audit report. In audit report, where will you put it? I'm sure you are all very familiar with the standards on audit, especially SS 700, which says the first paragraph in an audit report is your opinion paragraph. Okay, and in that you say that this is our opinion, and then below that is going to be a basis for opinion. Okay, and after that is going to be a management representation and things like that, and then the auditor's responsibility and other things to be reported, including compliance with laws. And where will you report this? Will you qualify your main report to say it affects true and fair? Does it affect true and fair? Does it affect true and fair? Excellent. What is a key audit matter?
Sir, this is a policy decision taken.
Hope that is audible. Yeah.
Hello. Sir, this is a policy decision taken by bank. So, is a specific peculiar, item which is need to be considered. We are telling that this is the item which will have impact on.
Okay. Under what you will put? You said key audit matters.
Yes, the provision like NPA classification and interest accrual part.
No, in the audit report, will it form part of where? Main report or key audit matters?
Key audit matters.
Okay. Good. What is key audit matter? What is a key audit matter? Because when you say you want to put it under key audit matter, you should know what is key audit matter and what should be reported under key audit matter. Yes, there.
Which affect financials.
What are the new things has happened in that key matters has to be reported? What are we are finding out the extraordinary information?
Excellent. See, basically what a key audit matter is, what is the significant area of audit, okay, which as an auditor you come across, which is key in nature, and what is the type of audit processes you have put in place to do the key audit matter. For example, if you are talking about key audit matter on advances, you have to say what is your approach to deal with this key audit matter and what you have dealt with. So it's an approach statement to say this was the key audit area and this was our approach. So key audit matters will only be in relation to what is the key audit area and what is the audit approach. That's not a place where you can put any sort of a. So this point of whatever you want to draw reference cannot come under key audit matters. Is there anything else in the audit report which comes apart from your opinion paragraph and key audit matters? Excellent. What is the emphasis of matter?
We are emphasizing on specific area that effect has not been given in the financial statement.
Excellent. So can we now look at saying that to put that as a note in the financial statement, either if it is not put by the bank in your handwriting, right, as a note to state this many accounts of this value has not been classified as NPA on account of the Supreme Court decision, consequent to which this much of account has not been classified as NPA, this much of provision has not been made, this much of interest reversal has not been considered in the normal course of IRAC norms. However, the bank has prudentially made a ad hoc provision to the extent of this much and also made a provision for reversal of interest. See, in the first place, they are supposed to reverse the interest itself. In this case, they are only making a provision to reverse the interest. These are two different things. One is an accounting entry, another is a provision. A provision gets reversed in the next year. Whereas if the accounting entry was there, it would have permanently moved out of it and would have stood in interest suspense account. This we can draw reference into our emphasis of matter paragraph in our audit report. This is what we are expected to do this year as part of our audit. Areas related to LFAR, do you really want me to touch quickly on that? I'm sure that morning Ramjani spoke about it. If you are very keen, I can quickly touch upon that. Otherwise, I can take you through the other areas. What's your choice? Yes, sir? Other areas. Good. Saves me the botheration. I talked about the circulars which are there. Kindly note down the circulars which are relevant for you. And I will touch upon some things which I not touched earlier. 27th March, 17th April, 23rd May, and 6th August. All these are talking about the standstill clause. Okay. And MSME for restructuring. Okay. And is there restructuring available only for MSMEs? Who are all eligible for this restructuring? An industrial loan taken by a small and medium enterprise having an exposure of 35 crores to financial institutions. Will they be eligible under the MSME route? So some amount of reading these circulars helps a lot. In the first case, the MSME circular of 2018 onwards, whether it are related 180 days, which brought out to 190 days, or whether it is 11th February 2020 circular, where it extended the restructuring to say that the restructuring can be done on or before 31st of March 2021. All these are accounts for eligibility is that their outstanding with financial institutions, fund-based and non-fund-based, should not exceed 25 crores. Only such accounts have the benefit of that restructuring. In the illustration which I gave you of 35 crores, they are not eligible for it. If the bank has wrongly classified, restructured such accounts, giving benefit of it, such account should be classified as NPA because in the first place they are eligible for the restructuring as per the circular dated 11/2/2020. Become as an NPA for the current year. Notwithstanding the fact that the Supreme Court said that no account which is marked as NPA as on 31st August 2020 should become as NPA on 31st March 2021. This would have become NPA even earlier. So this account NPA by the auditors during the course of audit. However, what happened is that by way of a circular dated 6th August 2020, because of the COVID, RBI has mandated restructuring of loans. Here, what is the eligibility? I told you there are two circulars on August 8, 2020. One among them is the extension of the 11/2/2020 circular to say this 25 crores and all. Okay, where they can, including the interest which was payable from 1st of March 2020 to 2022, 31st August also can be rolled over and can be converted into a funded interest term loan, for which the repayment can be 2 years moratorium can be given and they can be paid. This is the circular of MSME dated 6/8/2020. This is applicable for exposures up to 25 crores. They should have a GST registration. These are the conditions. All these conditions if it is met. On the same day, one more circular has been given on 6/8/2020. Who are all covered under that? Go back, look at the presentation given by our Shyam Ramdani as well as Manohar Gupta here. There they said who are all not eligible: housing finance companies, NBFCs, agricultural advances, MSMEs. These are all not covered by this 6/8/2020 because MSME is already covered otherwise. Agricultural advances also not covered because agricultural advances are covered by a separate circular. Except for this, housing loans, consumer loans, vehicle loans, personal loans, then other than this, large borrower corporates, all these people are eligible for getting their overdues restructured on the basis of the 6/8/2020 circular. So first you will have to see in all the cases of restructuring eligibility. Eligibility, as I said, kindly keep it in mind, as on 28th February 2020, the overdue should not be more than 29 days. If the overdue was more than 30 days as on 28th February 2020, none of this beneficial provision will be applicable to them. Such accounts cannot be restructured. If it is restructured also, the asset classification cannot undergo a change. This will still be covered by the regular dispensation to say any account which is restructured should be immediately classified as NPA. So look for the eligibility class. If it fits the eligibility class, second point which you have to look at is whether there is an economic necessity arising out of COVID. Economic necessity arising out of COVID, then they are eligible. To illustrate, their software engineer who is earning almost 6 lakhs per month has taken 2 crores housing loan, and during the entire pandemic, he did not lose his job nor a single rupee salary. Is there an economic necessity for him to get his accounts rolled over? If he has been given a restructuring on this, that is not in line with this. Such accounts do not get the dispensation for it because they have done the restructuring. Immediately that account has to be classified as NPA. So eligibility criteria, necessity arising out of COVID. In case he has lost a job for 2 months and then got a job again, 2 months of that period, he didn't have any income, and because of that, he's well. So our audit this year has to be far more detailed. Whilst we may think that there is no necessity for us to classify accounts as NPA during the year, our responsibility is much more than the previous year because most of the accounts, they look like standard, but whether they are really standard or not, you will have to test them for that with the standards. If they are not meeting the standards, you need to reclassify them as non-performing advances. Having said this, let me take you through what are the ways in which you will be able to get evidences. What is an evidence? For whatever is being said, we need evidences, right? There are various mechanisms which are available for us to do audit of large advances. Some of them, can anybody name what are the external evidences we can get? Fantastic. Good. One among them is MCA. MCA in terms of the audited financial statements. Very good.
CRILC report,
What is a CRILC report?
credit rating information of
CRILC is credit report information of large corporates, large credits. Okay. And for what is the cutoff for CRILC?
I think it is every year published.
CRILC is a weekly report which has to be sent by the banks to RBI. Okay. Of all advances which are above 50 crores and above. Okay. Then what others are there? External evidences which you can get. GST, very good. You can go to the GST portal to find out whether the borrower who's enjoying a working capital limit is having really the set turnover for which he has been reporting the figures, and whether he is also submitting the GST returns on month along with his monthly stock statements, monthly stock and operational data, to be eligible to have the drawing power which will enable him to sort of continue to enjoy the limits. Then let me go through. You have credit CIBIL, that is your Credit Information Bureau of India Limited. CIBIL is your credit central repository of information on large credits. Okay. Credit Information Bureau of India Limited. CIBIL is applicable to an individual also. And this can be generated only by the bankers, CRILC also. So when you go to the bank in large advances, by default, ask them to give you the CRILC report if it is 50 crores and above. CIBIL reports of all borrowers, because even for 1 lakh, CIBIL will be applicable. Report, in the CIBIL report, you will find, okay, the credits and any defaults on any of the accounts will be the part of credit. In CRILC report, where 50 crores and above, one of the classes which will be there, dates on which default is there, date on which default is rectified. At the end of it, one column, are there any frauds reported? In the CRILC report, kindly see this column. If it says yes there, okay, it will not give any further information beyond yes. Once it says yes, you have to insist on the bank to get you the further detailed report of the CRILC, in which the details of banks from which the loans have been taken, banks which have classified the account as fraud, dates on which the account has been classified as fraud will come. So CRILC is your first entry point for looking at it. After that, you take the detailed report, and if you find the account is classified as a fraud in any other bank, and here it's a standard advance, you know what to do then. Right? So this is how you will be able to use external evidences as part of your audit tool, as well as document them. And if it says everything is fine, it also strengthens your view to say that this is standard advance. Okay. Then if it's a vehicle loan which is taken, you have what is called as a Vahan system. Based on the vehicle registration number, you go and log in, you will find the entire details of that, including the hypothecation details of that, and whether that is been already there, whether it is sold, all the details related to the vehicle will be available. Whether it is damaged, whether any insurance claim is there, like that, no? Entire detail about the vehicle loan will be available. It could be a truck, it could be, high value vehicles, it could be a Mercedes Benz or whatever it is. So Vahan systems will be able to tell you about the vehicle loans. The third one is CERSAI. What is CERSAI? It is the entire information related to your securitization. Securitization of assets charged to the banks has to be reported by the bank to CERSAI, and based on which the entire immovable properties which are charged to the bank will be available in CERSAI. So as part of your audit documentation, if a loan has been given and immovable property is part of it, you ask for the CERSAI report. In that you verify whether the charge is created or not. Once the charge is created on that, you know that the charge is there. Why I am telling this is, there are cases where on the same property, multiple loans are taken. When multiple loans are taken, you cannot create multiple CERSAI for the same document. So automatically in one place it will throw up that the documentation will say that the loan is given and this is a security, but the SSI will not say that it has been secured. Straight away, you will be able to find out fraud on that. So this is an external evidence with which you will be able to ascertain whether the security charged to the bank is available and whether it is correctly done or not. There is also this two things which are there. The moment a loan is sanctioned, okay, there is something called as credit audit. Okay, for advances above 50 lakhs, banks have an inbuilt system to say loans above 50 lakhs, credit audit is done, which means to say all the loan documentation, other things and all, whether it's been correctly taken or not, the credit audit report will be there. Kindly take a copy of the credit audit report. It could be pre-sanction, it could be post-sanction. Credit audit report will say whether all the documents related to that as stipulated in the terms and conditions are complied with or not. The next one is legal audit.
So, in CERSAI securitization, that will match with MCA, whatever charge in MCA and this.
Should it or not? That's it.
So-
It should. If it doesn't, you know what to do.
Yeah. So second question, I have heard SERSAI also one word.
No. What I said is, SERSAI is the securitization of the assets charged to the bank. SARFAESI is in a loan borrower account after default within 30 days, the bank has to take action under section 13.1 and 13.2 to notify that the account has become NPA and start the process of recovery of loans. These are two independent things. Okay. So the next thing is the legal audit. In terms of the legal audit, the legal opinion will be there to say all the legal conditions and all have been satisfied or not. So in large advances, kindly take cognizance of this legal audit. Take the legal audit report. This will also be useful to you because in the legal audit, if the advocate has said that these are still pending, it is your duty to ensure that those conditions have been satisfied. If it is not there, you need to report about this in your LFAR. Then many cases prior to UDIN, what used to happen is the financial statements as audited will be given to the bank, but it will not have been audited by the chartered accountant at all. The name of a chartered accountant, his membership number, signature, everything would be there. But it will not be known to the member whose name is fabricated in this. That is the advantage of having introduced UDIN. Today, as a banker, if you want to verify whether the audited financial statement submitted or the stock statement submitted or any other certificate submitted, whether it's the book debt statements or no, any other statement which is submitted to the bank, whether it is correct or not, you can ask them to verify with the UDIN, and based on the UDIN, you will be able to find out the veracity and correctness of the statements furnished to the bank on which the bank has relied, based on which the drawing power is determined. UDIN is the next one, external evidence. You also have the stock audit reports. As I told you, the last page of the stock audit report is designed in such a way, whatever is the major weaknesses in that is supposed to be given as a summary in the last page. So first look for all the summary of the last page. As per RBI norms, stock audit has to be done every year, not more than 12 months apart. And for all borrower accounts, working capital limits in excess of 5 crores, it is mandatory. If it is not taken, or there is a delay, or there are deficiencies, or discrepancies, or variances in that, it is the duty of the auditor, branch auditor, to look closely into that, whether it has any material impact in the asset classification itself. And if it has an impact, you need to give that impact in determining the drawing power, then verify whether the account is a standard advance or not. And if it was not a standard advance prior to 31st August 2020, you still need to classify it as NPA. For the reason it is not marked as NPA as on 31st August 2020, if it becomes NPA on 4th September 2020, the Supreme Court will come to the raid. You can't classify that as NPA, though the account would have become actually NPA on 4th September 2020. You can also see the audited financial statements. You see the auditor's qualifications and also verify the variance in the stock statements, book debts, look at the turnover, the amount of stock holding, whether the debtors are stagnant, whether the creditors are also stagnant, and you find if that is going to be stagnant, and also if you see there's a continuous increase in unbilled revenue, continuous increase in stock disproportionate to the turnover, or any other parameter, that the entire financial statements is not giving a true and correct picture of that. If you go behind that to find out whether it is the normal one, or if you find that the stock auditor's report is supporting your contention to say physical stocks are not there, only in books that has been reported higher, you have every reason to report this first for being looked into as RFA, to look into the aspect of whether it is a potential fraud. And if you are convinced that the stock is drawing power is not there, and if it's prior to 31st August 2020, you need to classify it as non-performing also. Then you can do a lot of data mining. Today you have a lot of these sites, open-ended source like Zoba. In Zoba Corp, you can go and ask for details related to any significant change in the ownership, huge transfers of the shareholding patterns, okay, or pledging of shares, okay. All these are indicators of credit weakness in this account, and these external evidences can give you some idea about it. You can also see the financial statements for related party transactions, huge related party transactions, not matched by the increase or decrease in turnover or as a proportion to the previous years, is also a point for being alerted. Then you also have to look at whether any petitions have been filed before NCLT under the IBC. If that be the case, or any case has been filed in a non-performing advance, you need to ask for the latest status report of that cases. Because in what we find is, if a petition has been filed before NCLT 3-4 years back, at the branch level, you will generally not have information. Because of it will be continued in NPA status, but it may be in doubtful 1 or 2, whatever category it is. If an order has been passed in NCLT, say that the unit cannot be revived, then it goes into liquidation. If an order of liquidation has been passed, then RBI says that wherever in NCLT cases order of liquidation has been passed, then the entire amount of outstanding should be provided for. So determining and ascertaining the current status of NCLT petitions under the IBC has to be looked into as part of your evidence to determine the amount of provision which is made in NPA accounts. And as I was told, please run through this, whatever is the NPA accounts as on 31st March 2020, you take out, and 31st March 2019. Accounts which were NPA as on 31st March 2020 should have migrated to the next lower classification as on 31st March 2021. That is to say, if it was substandard on 31/3/2020, it should go to D1 this year. If it is D1 last year, it should go to D2 this year. And such accounts which are NPA as on 31/3/2019, which are substandard that time, okay, should go to D2 this year. If it was D1 that year, it should go to D3 this year. So you should be able to map this as part of your audit. Only exceptions will be accounts which are NPA as on 31st March 2019 or 20. On payment of it could have been upgraded. After upgrading, subsequently it might have got downgraded. In your LFA, there is a specific point which you are supposed to report about. All upgradation, downgradation of 10 crores and above, there is a specific duty on the auditors to report whether the upgradation, downgradation is correct. In my personal experience, most of the upgradations are wrong. For a simple reason, if you go by the master circular, it says when an account can be upgraded. Where does it say that? Where does it talk about when and how upgradation can be done? Fantastic. What is for irregularity? Good.
The entire
It's on.
the entire irregularity account should be repaid before an account can be upgraded from NPA to standard?
What does the system do? The system is programmed in such a way, the moment the overdue is brought down to less than 90 days, for example, 5 installments are overdue, account is NPA. The borrower pays 3 installments. How much overdue in the books? What does the system do? It upgrades. Is it as per RBI norms? This is where our role comes. Such accounts wrongly upgraded has to be again downgraded by us. So we need to pass an MOC to bring it in line with the RBI norms. Okay. Second thing, when you have to upgrade, okay, there's additional condition. An account which is classified as NPA, okay, has to run through for a specified period, especially when it is restructured. Okay, the restructured specified period is 1 year. 1 year it has to be lying in the same classification. That is to say, if an account is NPA, it is restructured and 5 installments are overdue, the borrower pays all the 5 installments. Can you upgrade it? Because it's a restructured account, even though all the arrears are paid, it has to continue for a minimum period of 12 months before it can be upgraded. But the system does not do this. System will automatically upgrade it because there is no overdues. This is another area in which you will have to point it out to keep it in the same asset classification. Number 3, when you talk about it, when it is restructured, say for example, whatever is the dues which are there are all restructured to be paid, okay, with a moratorium of 6 months. Okay, the interest and installments falls due 6 months from the date of restructuring it. Okay, and say for example, this restructuring is done on 15th September 2019. Okay, and the moratorium given is 9 months. Okay, so when did that first installment fall due? 15 June 20. Okay, so if it is 15 June 20, okay, what is the date of restructuring? 15 September 2019. What does it say? For 1 year it should continue in the status. What is the date on which the account will become standard? Is it 15 September 2020?
From September 2019 to
15
next
September
September 2020, 1 year.
Yeah. But the upgradation can happen 1 year from the due date on which the installment falls due and the borrower continues to pay all the amounts due as per the restructured terms for 1 year. It is not the date on which you restructure, it is 1 full year of compliance with the restructured terms, which will enable the borrower to get the account restructured, to be upgraded, which means in this case, okay, though it is restructured on 15 September 2019, the first installment falling due on September 2020, the account can be upgraded only in June 2021. Till then it has to stand in, to be retained in the same asset classification. This is also not being followed in the IRAC norms as per the banks. All these cases we have to specifically look at and classify as per IRAC norms. As I told you, there are lots of system related challenges which are there. What happens is that when in terms of sanction is monthly repayment, okay, plus interest to be serviced as and when applied. But when the terms of sanctions are punched into the master, okay, by default it takes EMI. Unless it is marked as monthly interest plus interest, monthly installment plus interest, the system takes it as EMI and reworks the amount to be paid. What will happen? Monthly repayment is set 1 lakh per month. Interest on, say for example, the loan is 50 lakhs. 1 lakh monthly payment of principal plus interest as and when applied is the terms of sanction. But the system when it is wrongly punched or not specifically put as 1 lakh and this, converts it automatically as an EMI to say EMI of 1 lakh. What happens is the borrower pays 1 lakh because he is communicated 1 lakh. For 3 months he pays 3 lakhs. But the interest which is to be paid, okay, is 3 lakhs plus another 50,000. This 50,000 does not get paid. So for three months, if it is there, it doesn't become NPA because it is not more than 90 days. But at the end of it, if it is 9 months, the system would not have classified this account as NPA, whereas as per the terms of sanction, he is supposed to pay 9 months in installments of 9 lakhs, 1 lakh into 9, plus interest 50,000 into 9 months, 50,000 into 3 months, 1.5 lakhs. 9 plus 1.5, 10.5 lakhs is the amount which is supposed to pay. You would have ended up paying only 9 lakhs. There's a shortfall of 1.5 lakhs. Okay. To this extent, when you see that, the account should have been classified as NPA, which the system would not have done. So we need to look at whether the demands and the appropriations which are done in the system, in the master, in large advances, has correctly done or not. Second is migration issues. As I spoke in the morning, what happens is they may migrate from Finacle 8 to Finacle 10. While migrating, there are lots of challenges in the data not being automatically upgraded. Or while doing that, and monthly installment becomes EMI or an EMI becomes monthly installment, these sort of mistakes are identified. So it is a duty in large advances to check whether the terms of sanction is correctly punched into the master or not, and whether the appropriations are happening as per the terms of sanction. One another thing in Finacle is, as auditors, what we can do is, we can ask them to give us in large advances as part of our audit and audit documentation, what is called as a resume. What is a resume? Here, Suresh, agent so and so, residing so and so. Is that the resume? What is a resume?
Working, again, reworking that.
Any idea what is a resume in Finacle? In all working capital limits, a resume is one which will give you of total number of debits, the value of debits, total number of credits, value of credits, opening balance, closing balance, number of days it was beyond the limits, that is overdrawings, number of days on which cash has been drawn. All these information readily will be available in the resume. So ask the resume period for your audit. If you find in that in 340 out of 365 days, the account has been overdrawn, it will automatically warrant you to extend your audit workings to see whether the account is really standard at all or not. Same way, if the credits are not there, or the credits are not sufficient to take care of the amount of interest debited in the account, in one glance, based on this resume, you will be able to form an idea as to what is the extent to which you need to look into this account. So this is one thing which can be of great use to you, especially if it is a Finacle software. Same way you have what is called as repayment schedule. Okay. If you take the repayment schedule for term loans, similar data will be available. But what you need to identify in this is, please look at the master to see whether the terms of sanction has been properly punched or not. If the terms of sanction is properly punched, then you can easily place reliance on that. In this, it is the amount of overdue principal, what is the amount of overdue interest. If the amount of, and the number of days overdue. So if you see the number of days overdue less than 90 days, and the master is correct, you will have an idea that this account is not a bad account. And it also strengthens your audit documentation to that extent. Date of NPA. Can the date of NPA be 31st March for every quarter end? Can a date of NPA be 30th June, 30th September, 31st December and 31st March? Why?
It is considered from the date when repayment schedule as per the terms of the law.
In how many banks have you seen the dates being aligned to exactly 90 days and not on the quarter ends? Have you paid attention as auditor to see whether the dates are not only on quarter ends? Have you paid attention? In Finacle, this problem was there, especially Finacle 10. We identified, we brought it to the notice of the in a central statutory auditors meeting with the personally told the Deputy Governor of RBI that the softwares are not identifying the NPA on 90 days basis. They are all identifying them on the date of run. A date of run is generally on the quarter ends. And because it is run at the quarter end, it cannot predate it. On the date of run only it can classify. Because the run happens at the quarter ends, the NPA dates are all marked at the quarter ends, which is not in line with the RBI norms. Subsequent to that, the bank in which we are auditors, they put up a process to classify that accounts on the number of days basis, exact number of days. I would exhort all of you here, please pay attention. If it is quarter end and not this, whilst it may not significantly alter the provisions to be made, in principle it is not in line with the IRAC norms. So please, in the LFAR, one column is there. Has the branch classified all the advances as per IRAC norms? You will have to classify, yes, generally yes, subject to NPA dates being aligned to the quarter ends and not on the exact dates. You will have to qualify like that. Whilst having classified an account as NPA, the first time NPA, if an account is classified as an NPA for the first time this year, there is an additional obligation on the branch auditor to look at it, whether the classification is correct or not. While the branch would have classified it as substandard for the first time because it's classifying, many times when you look at it, you will find that the account should have been classified as an NPA in the previous years itself. Because of ABC reasons, it was not done. And when you look at it and try to go back, if you find it should have been an NPA 2 years back, what has been classified by the branch as substandard as part of your audit, with all your evidences, you need to pass an MOC to take it back to D3 as the case may be. You can't just leave saying that account has been classified by the branch itself, my responsibility is over. No. New accounts which are classified, you need to see, this is what is called as crystallization of date of NPA. Crystallization of date of NPA is like your date of birth. Okay. If a newborn is there, first time you keep the name. Okay. After that they can change, but then no, date of birth doesn't change. Like that, the date of NPA will not change. When you see that being current year, you need to verify whether the date of NPA is correctly done or not. Based on that, you need to ascertain the correct asset classification. Then the interest income. What happens is, in accounts which are classified as NPA, the amount of interest and other charges which are not serviced should be reversed. How will you do this? How will you ensure as auditors that the entire amount of interest not serviced and the charges have been reversed or not? How will you first identify whether it's correctly done? Passing is a very important. How will you see that? How will you audit? Take the print, then what will you do? Please go ahead and tell.
We take the ledger print, and from the date of the NPA, we calculate the interest that is needed to be reversed.
What if the interest prior to that date is not serviced?
Even that requires to be reversed.
For how many years?
Then the NPA date changes if it does not service.
No, for example, a loan has been given. It's a project loan. Okay, first 2 years, the moratorium is given. The interest was supposed to be added to that. Okay, so because of that it was taken. After that it is restructured. It continues as a standard asset. Interest is accounted, but no amount has come. Subsequently, it is classified as NPA in the current year. How many years interest will you reverse?
After the moratorium period.
Any other views?
From the date of restructure.
The entire interest which has not been serviced, is it income? Whatever be the period, and income is one, okay, which is received by the bank. Only in standard advances, it can be accounted on accrual basis. Once an account is classified as NPA, it is on cash basis. When you see the cash basis, interest accounted for all these years has not been received. All the interest and charges need to be reversed. Not for 1 year, not from the date of restructuring, not from the date of NPA, nothing like that. Entire amount has to be done. This is another area which the software fails. It has the same criteria. It reverses the interest. Any interest charged after the date of NPA, it doesn't apply at all. It reverses interest which are applied during the year or for a period of 90 days. All these things it does, but it does not fully reverse the entire amount of unrealized interest. We as auditors, as he rightly said, take the ledger print. We have to ascertain what is the total amount of interest not serviced. The entire amount of interest not serviced has to be reversed by us as part of our audit. So this is the relation to that. Same is the case with other charges, legal expenses, and things like that. The next thing is you are also expected to see the marginal cost lending rate of interest has to be punched into the system. If the marginal cost rate of interest is not punched into the system, as and when the marginal cost of rate goes up or comes down, it will have an impact on the amount of interest charged. This is also one chartered accountant got a letter as to MCLR has not been punched into the system. Why you have not identified? So this is also our duty. And in the revised LFAR, there's a specific question on this. MCLR or ECLR. Okay. I'll quickly take you through few things because I think I'm coming to the close of my session. Check discounting. Kindly pay attention. Checks are discounted, not presented, or subsequently dishonored. Warrants account to be classified as NPA. These are all window dressing. Transfer from related parties and subsequently getting back. Circular transfers, new loans, reduction in margin without necessity for it, restructure without following proper procedure, or go down loans are given, no rent is coming, treated as agricultural advance, 2 crop seasons and kept as standard advance. Willful defaulters who have been continued as standard assets, where frauds have been created by a borrower in other banks, still retained as a standard asset in our bank. Gold loans, loans taken for non-agricultural purposes classified as agricultural purposes, or loans taken for agricultural purposes by non-agriculturalists do not come as the classification of agricultural advances. Agriculture refacement, agriculture Kisan cash credit accounts, terms of it says on the produce, the entire loan should be paid. After that, the new loan should be given. What will happen is they will not get the payment at all. It will only be shown as new agriculture cash credit given. They will adjust it and continue to show the account as standard asset. Agricultural advances which are restructured should be classified as restructured agricultural advances, and the provision for restructured account should also happen in that, which the banks generally don't do. COVID documentation renewal, where an account has not been renewed for more than 180 days, the date on which the renewal falls due, the limit should be classified as 0 in the bank's records. If they don't take the limit as 0, you need to comment in your LFAR as matter which has to be considered by the central auditors to recommend to them that the moment the renewal is expired, the limit should be classified as 0, and short review, short renewal should not be giving the benefit for continuation of the limit beyond 180 days. If it continues beyond 180 days, it should be classified as NPA, but that will happen only if the limit is made as 0. In short, to summarize what I have been telling you, please plan your audit, keeping materiality threshold. In your audit report itself, mention your threshold. First, write a letter of engagement to the branch. In the letter of engagement, call for all the records, especially where the records are not at the branch, whether it is in the regional loan center or zonal loan center or in the credit groups. Ask for the documents which are required. Ask them to prepare and send it to you. What you can do is, in today's context, whether the physical file comes to you or not, all the processes are happening on the system. So the entire process note, credit appraisal, sanction letter, all the securities which is created, everything which is there in the regional loan centers or the zonal loan centers can be sent by way of an email, and you can also verify that with the reference to the processing note which has been prepared at the branch and forwarded as a sanction by the branch manager to the controlling authorities. Keep all these things in your audit documentation, along with the credit audit report, legal report, and things like that. Ensure enough diligence is shown as auditors in keeping your eyes, ears, and everything open to as part of your audit process, and be very skeptical about something going wrong, and perform your duty to the best of your abilities. Application of all the required standards of audit, of assurance, accounting standards, IRAC norms, and all the circulars. Kindly update yourself and be ready with it and apply that. Perform your duties with sincerity and careful, because this year is going to be a critical year. I and telling bank audits, branch audits will be a thing of the past. 6 o'clock in the evening. I don't want to make you more desperate about what's going to happen. Let me tell you the good news. That is not the case. Especially considering the RBI is saying 90% of your fund-based limits and 90% of your non-fund-based limits to come under the audit purview. This is not going to be diluted by RBI for eons, EONS. It will never change. Given that, bank branch audit will continue. Number of branches will come down. The branches you may get come down, but the bank audit will continue. Given this, friends, I think it's a great pleasure to interact with you. And keep the peer review in mind. Keep your reporting. And once you have done a fabulous job, come back. Fees will be a good incentive for you. Have peace of mind. Go back to your bed, sleep peacefully, and thank me if there is an occasion in which I can be of any other help or assistance to you during your course of audit, which I will definitely assure you of. Thank you very much.
So you just about the book.
Where is it? She has taken the book.
I'll give
Divya has everything.
So I should have. So members, so I thank all the participants who are present here physically and both virtually for you giving an excellent presentation. Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. As a token of small gratitude, I request the chairman to kindly come forward and present a memento to PR Suresh sir.
Friends, I need to tell you that nothing happens without somebody being behind you to be successful. My better off is here, who has been part of me to be, yes, where I am.
Madam,
so
kindly come on the desk. Sudha madam, I request you to please come on the desk. Also, members, there's a good news. There's a book written by name Night Angles 2.0, How 11 Women Showed Great Guts and Gumption. This is written by R. Shivkumar and V. Pattabhiram, which covers success stories of 11 successful chartered accountant women. Among that, 2 women are covered from Bangalore. Among that, one is Sudha ma'am, who happens to be wife of PR Suresh sir. We're very glad and proud to have you here, ma'am, today. And we request you to kindly hand over this book to Bangalore branch chairman so that we keep this book in our branch. I request Chairman to kindly present movement to both Sudha ma'am and PR Suresh. Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.